would like to introduce me. Hi, my name is Beth Anz. Give me just a second to set up, but we're going to talk today about Johnny Appleseeds of Change. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Beth Anz. I'm the director here, and my visual ID is I'm a middle-aged woman with glasses, and I'm wearing a shirt that's got a bee on it, and it says, "Be kind," because we're talking about Johnny Appleseed, and I didn't have an apple shirt, so we got a bee shirt today, because, you know, bees are important, and we love the bees. So let me tell you a little bit about this really cool character named Johnny Appleseed. Once upon a time, there was a man, a myth, a mystic, and a legend that wandered the young countryside, and with him he brought the gospel and apple seeds. This wandering evangelist was named John Chapman, but you better know him as Johnny Appleseed. He had a remarkable life, and he left a lasting impression on the American countryside, using both the seeds of apples and faith to shape the lives of many. And through his story, I believe so can we. Now, John Chapman was born in Massachusetts around Independence Day in 1774, but is in 1801 in Licking Creek, Ohio, where we first see the seeds of his legend. Farmer John Stedden recalled a rather eccentric man who planned to head west and plant apple seeds for future farmers. Now, 5 years later, another early Ohio settler found this eccentric man. He was barefoot, he's dressed in rags, he has a sack and a tin pot or a bowl on his head as a hat, and he's paddling two canoes together, and one was filled with apple seeds. Now, John Chapman began his journey to the legendary Johnny Appleseed as an orchardist's apprentice before he set out on his own. He didn't regard any earthly woman as wholesome enough for him, so he was a single man throughout his life. Yep, that's true. He was friendly, but he preferred a life of solitude, and he had over 1,000 acres to his name by the end of his life, but he never flaunted his wealth. He ran a thriving business, but he was not the best bookkeeper, so the extent of his influence we may never know. He's been described by others as devout, sharing books of his faith wherever he went, yet he was primitive, sleeping anywhere he could, and he lived independent of any wants or desires. His simple life was greatly influenced by his religious beliefs. He was a follower of the Church of New Jerusalem, a Swedish Christian mystic, Emanuel Swedenborg. He's a scientist turned prophet who is admired for many prominent 19th century figures. Swedenborg was admired by W.B. Yeats, Reverend Robert Frost, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, the fundamental Swedenborgian tenets that Chapman taught were nonviolence, the universality of being, and the connectedness of the universe. They believed that God could be most experienced through nature and simple living. In fact, one tale says that he walked barefoot because he gave his only pair of shoes to a frontier family in need. Other acts of generosity he was known for was to stay and teach settlers how to care for the orchards he planted along the way for no fee. Real faith, he believed, was manifested in the acts of charity and commitment to a life of usefulness. He was also vegetarian and believed in the rights of animals, which was very unorthodox at the time. He cared for sick animals, and even, legend has it, once quenched his own fire to save the lives of mosquitoes drawn to its flame. There are lots of other tall tales are told about John Chapman sacrificing his own comfort so as not to upset the wild animals on the frontier. Now, an interesting fact about the evangelism of Johnny Appleseed is his faith explicitly forbade grafting trees, which is attaching branches to existing roots. So he believed it caused suffering and removing their God-given right to grow. So in this act of compassion, he planted only seeds from cider mills, and he created nurseries across the frontier with natural items like fallen trees or bushes to protect them, and preaching and planting as he traveled. John Chapman was extremely popular for planting these seeds. Beyond the apples produced was a service he provided to future homesteaders. At the time, all frontier homesteads were required to plant 50 apple trees and 20 peach trees in 3 years, and then they would be granted 100 acres of land. Planting and caring for orchards was seen as an intent to stay, so tying people to the land and creating sustainability for growing communities. So John Chapman created these orchards with seemingly divine inspiration wherever he thought the settlers would settle and come. He started his business by contracting locals to care for those trees, while he continued to travel, plant, and preach the Swedenborgian teachings to whoever would listen. Now, he would return to those orchards when the settlers arrived and either sell or barter those orchards to the new settlers, creating for himself a thriving business on the frontier and a reputation for his generosity. He was not only regarded well by settlers, but by some of the indigenous people and the natives as well. Although he did cause some tensions with his contributions to their displacement, they generally respected his simple lifestyle, friendliness, and knowledge of plants, and therefore mostly left him alone. Some even considered him touched by the Great Spirit. John Chapman's planting methods made his nurseries quite unique in the variety of apples they produced. As mentioned before, he would not graft trees. He would only plant seeds. And if you want consistency in your apples, you need to graft the trees. Therefore, Johnny Appleseed didn't just plant acres of apples. He planted thousands of different heirloom species. There were, in fact, more than 14,000 known varieties of apples in the US in 1905, and they bared colorful names like Sheep Snout, Hornet Sweeting, and Green Everlasting. Now, Johnny Appleseed played a major part in that biodiversity, and because of the wide variety of species, many of those apples were bitter, and they were not appealing to eat. So those were used in the making of cider. Being on the frontier with limited options for clean drinking water, cider was often used as currency on the frontier, and it was essential to survival, both for drinking and for canning. Not to mention he's bringing the gift of alcohol to the frontier, and therefore he was welcomed heartily. It gives new meaning to the Johnny Appleseed song. Oh, the Lord's been good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. So cider was very good to them as well. Now, most of these species are lost to us today. During Prohibition, all the heirloom orchards of Johnny Appleseed were destroyed, and the rise in the popularity of hops gave way to less variety. So by the late 20th century, we essentially had 3 varieties of apples left: red, yellow, and green. Now, there's a modern movement to restart that apple variety spirit of Johnny Appleseed. And one of its modern evangelists is an apple breeder named David Bedford, who discovered and diversified the popular sweet Honeycrisp apple. In the beginning, no grocery stores wanted his apples. They already had red and yellow and green. They didn't really need anything new or different. But David Bedford continued to grow and bet that someday grocery stores would be ready for change. And when they finally tried it, it not only sold well, it was their top product. It sold more than Coca-Cola. And once that happened, the apple revolution began. And today, the apple has 200 unique varieties, ranging from sweet to sour, big to small, red to green. And so never doubt that a small seed has the power to grow into a mighty orchard. That when we plant diverse seeds in our garden, we get a wonderful variety. That we can innovate, that we can create change. Now, even if everyone's not ready to hear that taste or variety, someday they will be. So plant your orchard. Someday it will bear fruit. Maybe not for us. Maybe we can plant seeds now for our future. The legacy of Johnny Appleseed has inspired millions to plant trees and to help others. And who could ask for a better legacy than that? Never doubt that, like Johnny Appleseed, we are walking our faith by sharing the seeds of love and community. Never doubt that a small seed can have a big impact. Johnny Appleseed left us a legacy to be seeds of change, of kindness, of generosity, teaching us to plant the seeds of tomorrow to transform our world. Even a man barefoot in the wilderness with a sack of seeds and a pot on his head can change the world, and therefore, so can we. Thank you all.